To order. Ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Yes. Mayor Miller,
Here.
Mr. Self,
Here.
and Mr. Reckler,
Here.
Mr. Elkins,
Here.
Mr. Robinson is absent. And Ms. Parker,
Here.
Mr. Merrick,
Here.
Mr. Lopez.
Yeah.
And Ms. Cordova is absent, but we have a quorum.
Thank you. If you'd please join me and stand, Councilman Merrick's going to lead us in the invocation and I'll lead us in the pledges.
Our Heavenly Father, we come before you tonight, thanking you for all the many blessings that each one of us enjoys each and every day, and help us to remember that those blessings come through you. Lord, we just ask that you would be with us tonight so that we make wise decisions for the city of Proclamation, surrounding areas. Just help us to be determined in our thought process and make sure that we're doing the right things for the community. Lord, we just thank you for all those blessings, and especially for the gift of your Son, as well as to be our Savior. It's through his name that we pray.
Amen. Please join me in the pledge. The pledge of allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, the Zia symbol of perfect friendships among the United cultures.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. We have what looks like to be a lengthy agenda, but I think we'll get through it with time to get home before the sun comes up. But our first item today is public comment. The public has the opportunity to provide comment on subjects regarding city business during the public comment period. Speakers' comments will be limited to 3 minutes unless the mayor and/or councilors request more information. The time limit is given in an effort to allow public input, but also to move the agenda forward in a prompt yet efficient manner. All speakers must sign in at the beginning of the meeting. Topics are limited to 6 speakers per topic. I have 3 people that signed up for epcor, but I think you signed up to speak during the agenda, correct? And then Dwight Bale, are you here to speak on the aquifer recharge?
I would like to visit with everybody on that.
Okay, if you'll come up here, we'll give you 3 minutes.
Oh, thank you. I like going first. My name is Dwight Bell. I am an experienced petroleum and environmental consultant, 4th generation oil and gas man. Worked for Hughes Tool in Oklahoma and Texas, the Appalachia regions of West Virginia, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, all up in there, doing drilling, exploration activities for oil and gas, completions, production, remediation, and plugging of wells. So I'm experienced in that. I also work for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers out of the Tulsa district for core drill. I helped to reclaim a lot of Superfund projects, doing remediations and things like that for the Army Corps of Engineers out of the Tulsa district. So I am here. I really believe there's an alternative, a sustainable alternative to easement restrictions and to recharge the aquifer that will go off. It's the largest in the United States, but ours is kind of intricate to us. And I believe that we can recharge that aquifer efficiently. I'm here to understand maybe some of the regulations of New Mexico. Lived here in Dallas for 3.5 years, and I'll be happy to help my community in Roosevelt County in the water situation for the agriculture and for recharging y'all. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Would you mind before the meeting's over, dropping your information with our city manager so that we can stay in contact?
Yep.
All right, thank you.
I don't have a lot of cards, but yeah. So if there's anything I can do, you assist me.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. Next, we have Valentino Rodriguez to talk about community service. Are you ready to talk? Do you have something on the agenda?
He is on the agenda.
Okay, is that what you signed up for for your agenda item? Okay, that's all right, no problem. Just wanted to make sure. Not a problem at all. Thank you. We'll get there here after a bit. Our next item is minutes of the previous meeting, regular meeting to be held that was held on September 10th, 2024.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Rackler, a second by Mr. Self. Rather than do a roll call, Diane, how do you vote on that?
Yes.
Okay. Everyone else, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. So the record will reflect that Diane voted yes.
Yes.
All right, we have several presentations this evening. We have the Portales Fire Department employee recognition. And who is going to take care of that today? Okay.
Chief Kathy, good to be on.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I hope you can hear me over Zoom. I apologize for my absence. We have a few individuals I'd like to recognize, then Lieutenant James is going to give them their challenge coin. Firefighter Colton Wilson has been with the department for almost 2 years and has earned his PFD challenge coin by getting his EMT basic, EMT intermediate, and firefighter 1 and 2. So good job, Colton. Next up, we have Second Lieutenant Andrew Gramzo, who took the big leap in earning his EMT paramedic license. Andrew's a standout employee that we greatly appreciate, and we just thank his family for sharing him with us. So good job, Andrew. And then the other one that we have on there to recognize is firefighter Jonathan Montiel, who is unable to be at the meeting because he's exactly where he needs to be. His newborn baby has some medical issues, so they're seeking treatment in Minnesota. So we want to recognize him, but send a few prayers his way as well.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Yes, we will certainly do that. Our next item is National Fire Prevention Week proclamation, October 6th through the 12th, 2024. I'll read the proclamation. Whereas the City of Portales Fire Department is committed to ensuring the safety and security of all those living in and visiting our community. Fire is a serious public safety concern, both locally and nationally, and homes are the locations where people are at the greatest risk from fire. And whereas Portales residents should identify places in their home where fires can start and eliminate those hazards, installing and testing smoke alarms and establishing and practicing home fire escape plans significantly decrease the risk of personal injury and damage to homes. And whereas the City of Portales Fire Department's first responders are dedicated to reducing the occurrence of home fires and home fire injuries through prevention, protection, and education. The 2024 Fire Prevention Week theme, Smoke Alarms, Make Them Work for You, works to educate everyone about simple but important actions they can take to keep themselves and those around them safe. And therefore, I, Michael G. Miller, Mayor of the City of Portales, do hereby proclaim October 6th through the 12th, 2024 as Fire Prevention Week throughout our city. Chief, you have any comments?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We're doing it a little bit different this year. We've got a video that we're going to put out on all our social media. And then we have home fire extinguishers and smoke detectors that'll be given away through different raffles through that process. But we greatly appreciate you and the council's support as we work to make our community safer.
Okay. And do we know why it's always that week in October? Because the Great Chicago Fire took place on October 9th. So that's the reason we do Fire Prevention Week that week. It's also a good time to change the batteries in your smoke detectors as a reminder. So, okay, thank you, Chief. Next, we have our epcor water update presentation.
Sorry, the company has security controls on the computer, so. Mayor, council members, my name is Jeff Stuck. I'm the epcor's Vice President of Operations for the U.S. Regulated Utilities. And we really appreciate the opportunity to be here today. We were engaged a couple months ago to perform a condition assessment on your utility, water, wastewater, and reclaimed water. And so I'm here today with two of my colleagues, Mark Huerta and Rick Alvarez, to present what we found. We think that, well, I know that this will be a higher level briefing for you all, and I would imagine that the next step may possibly be a working session with the city staff to go over a little bit deeper dive into some of the findings that were observed and some of the recommendations that we would have towards the utility. Next slide, please. So this is a slide that Daniel Bale put together. I think it's quite good, talking about the circular nature of the utility and reflecting the Roosevelt County Water Co-op. Next slide. Next one is getting into some of the details. So before I dig into these findings, I do want to take a minute and express to the council our appreciation of your staff, their time, their willingness to show us around, let us know what we were looking at, assist us with the assessment. We want to, and I particularly want to emphasize that some of the things that we saw that I'll be going through here again at a high level are not uncommon. We see these. We actually have utilities in our epcor business in Arizona that face some of these similar challenges. So I want to make sure everybody understands these are not uncommon things that we're seeing, particularly for a utility of this size. I also want to emphasize that what we saw, we truly believe is not a reflection of anybody's lack of effort. My team and the folks that were present in the condition assessment were very impressed with the staff, knowledge, skills, capabilities, and openness, which sometimes you don't encounter when you're doing these kinds of things. So really wanted to acknowledge that. As I said, the condition of your utility is not atypical in communities such as yours that face a lot of competing priorities for the revenues that you have and the services that you're trying to provide. Our team consisted of operators that are certified at the highest levels that you can attain for running water and wastewater and reclaimed water systems, licensed electricians, maintenance experts, SCADA, and metering professionals. And SCADA, for folks that are not familiar, is an acronym for supervisory control and data acquisition. It's how we remotely track information coming off of the system that helps you kind of think of it like an EKG. You're taking readings, and those are informing decisions that you make. And so we have those people as part of the team as well. So getting into some of the observations, we observed a number of safety issues, a lot of those centered around electrical equipment and panels. Panels were pretty easily accessible. Those are things that as we come forward, if the council desires, and I'll get to this at the very end, for any next steps for epcor, things that we'd be fixing immediately. I think we were all young, and you know how to jimmy locks with a screwdriver. Those electrical panels can be jimmied pretty easily with screwdrivers and open. So securing those will be important. There were also components internal to the electrical panels themselves that presented electrical hazards. In our opinion, that would be things that we would be correcting if this was a utility that we had. And moving on to the wellhead concerns, we saw a lot of other observations, again, not atypical for a utility of your size and in your community. Unsafe pipe supports, lack of air relief valves. Air reliefs are items that will let the air discharge out of a water line. Many of you probably know, if you have air in the line, the water's fighting the air for space in the line. So you want to be free of that. Broken concrete around the well pads that could be compromising sanitary seals. the construction around the well to ensure any surface runoff or pollution might not get down into the well. Dissimilar pipe material, we saw galvanized and ductile iron pipe and various other components that don't really work well together when you're putting together the piping configurations for systems. The lack of data, that is getting into some of the SCADA stuff that I mentioned, but in particular, we were noticing that the meters at the wellheads some were operational, some weren't. And there are different degrees that the meters can function. You can measure instantaneous flow. You can also add totalizing components. That was a missing piece. And I'll talk about that here in just another few slides about how that is important data in terms of analyzing historically the capacity of your wells, the capacity of the aquifer and the ability of the wells to pull water out of the aquifer and discharge that into the system. The telemetry, again, this is not only meters, but it's also pressure gauges to understand what's going on in the distribution system at different times. Different things you can experience, water hammer from closing and opening valves too quickly, to pressure drops that would be indicative of leaks that might not surface immediately. So you're able to make your way around and track down those types of water loss activities. For disinfection, I do want to say we have in this slide, we've written disinfection concerns. I do want to very clearly state to you that our concern was not with a lack of disinfection of the water. Our concern was more with the 1 ton gas chlorine cylinder that's being used for disinfection. There are RCRA regulations that surround that, using that quantity of chlorine gas. It's also in close proximity to highway. I've worked in utilities in the past where we've actually detected chlorine leaks on 150-pound cylinders, and highways were closed, and because it's very dangerous and people are very concerned, rightfully so. You can see in this note, we're talking 1 ton versus 150-pound cylinders. Those are better, easier to manage. Chlorine sheds can contain any type of leak. So that will be one of the recommendations that we would be bringing forward as well. Next slide, please. So, bear with me. Moving on to the wastewater system. Our assessment showed that the plant currently does not meet the class 1A quality standards, which are the ones that are required if reuse of that reclaimed water is going to be used for irrigation purposes, where people could come into body contact with it. If you're at 1A, that water is safe for irrigating parks and recreational areas. A lot of repairs are needed to achieve 1A, some related to the plant itself, the physical equipment of the plant, others the operational process, which can be affected by the equipment. Your ability to waste solids out of the plant affects the biological health, which there affects the treatment. And so there were some of those issues that we noted in the condition assessment. We also noticed that the lift stations could use some securing in terms of people's ability to access those. You don't want anybody getting in there and doing anything or accidentally falling in to a lift station or anything of that nature. And we also were looking at the pump sizes and piping equipment associated with the lift stations. And so there were some concerns about proper pump sizes, adequate discharge piping and configuration related to the lift stations. And then we've mentioned in here, and this will kind of play out throughout some of the findings, hour meters on the electrical equipment. The measure of the hours that the electrical equipment is running, you can use that in times as a proxy for some things like, if you don't have a flow meter on a well, but you know what the well is capable of producing and you know the amount of time it's running, you can kind of extrapolate that data. So some of that we noticed was missing as well. The next slide, please. For the reuse water system. So, I mean, the finding is obvious. I think you guys are very aware of it, that the reuse system hasn't been used in a while. That relates to the performance of the wastewater plant. We talked about this the last time that we were presenting to you guys, that reuse in terms of our experience in running utilities. We use that reuse water to the maximum extent possible, so we supplant the need to use fresh water. Community parks, recreation areas, those types of things. The Wilson report actually mentioned recharge and injection wells. I will tell you that I'm not familiar with the New Mexico laws in terms of recharging reclaimed water and whether you are able to recover it. In some other jurisdictions, there are restrictions, but you are able to recharge and then recover that water without having to increase your allocation or allotment for whatever wells you have. And so that may very well be an option too. That can be, it can range in terms of the cost from moderate to expensive to do. And the quality of the water really becomes very critical when you're talking about injection wells. They can be susceptible to fouling if the water quality is not at the right stage that it needs to be to allow that activity to go continue unmitigated. And so those are things that are to be considered by the council and the city in exploring that as an option. But we certainly think that getting the reuse system up and running, getting the wastewater plant compliant with the 1A is really an important endeavor to allow the more direct reuse activities that could be taking place. Next slide, please. So we threw this one in here, data drives better decisions, and probably threw that up there more because there was some that was not there that would, if it were, it would be helpful. I do want to emphasize to you that it's not the end of the world that data is not there. I think it's possible to construct a little bit of the history and actually start compiling data on a going forward basis that can help inform better decisions. And so we rely on all this. I mentioned the SCADA, pressure gauges, flow meters, totalizers, hour meters. We rely on all of that information, and I guess I kind of would express it in a general term of it's like you get to use a scalpel when you're performing surgery rather than a butter knife. And I think when you're in a community and in a utility where it's very important that you're precise in how you spend the people's money to rebuild the utility, that it's really critical that you have as much information as you can so you make all or as many of the right decisions that give you the greatest impact as possible. So again, the well production history versus the current pumping capacities, the metering at the wells, totalizing the flows, and also looking at residential meters. Now, our assessment showed us that your meters out among your customers, many of them are what we call AMR capable right now. AMR is another acronym. We see that a lot in our industry. Automatic meter reading, but that allows for more accurate reading, more efficient reading. You essentially drive around in a truck with one of these in here up and down the streets, and the device will pick up the radio signals that are coming off the meters. You can take it a step further and go to what is referred to as AMI, advanced metering infrastructure. That's stalled cell tower, and push a button and you can take the readings. Those meters collect data at great granularity. You can actually see flow profiles every 2 minutes or 3 minutes if you desire. It can be a dangerous trap. We always try to say we don't want to collect data for the sake of collecting data, particularly this type of stuff. It's like body cams for police officers. You're storing all this data, and then there's costs associated with storing it, finding the right level of data that you need. The good news is your meters have this capability, the vast majority of them do. But on the other hand, they're of various vintage, different years that they were manufactured, and the metering manufacturers over time are increasing the radio signals in those meters. And so the ability to read these at the lowest level of the electronic reading, AMR, would be something that would need to be tested. We'd need to get a collector device in a truck and drive around and figure out where we could pick the signals up and which ones we're missing. But certainly an analysis that we would want to go through. Next slide, please. And maybe on to the next one. So this is that slide that you saw at the beginning, and you might have noticed the red box on the first one is on the the second bullet there, condition assessment. And so, we just wanted to highlight that in our eyes, the next step, if the council desired, would be for us to work with city staff on compiling a, capital improvement plan, talking about how the condition assessment findings have informed what we think would be the priority investments for the community to make, what we think would be the priority projects to improve water, wastewater, and reclaim water systems. We've started working on that. We're not sure whether that's the next step that you guys desire to take, but it wasn't, it didn't take a lot of work for us to do it after the condition assessment. And so Rick and Mark and their teams have started compiling that and putting it together. Once we have that, and we will put that together, if the council desires in a 10-year capital improvement plan, then it becomes an exercise of going through that and setting priorities, which need to come from leadership in the city itself on what are the best priorities. But we're kind of putting in there what we would do. That doesn't necessarily mean that's what you guys would do or should do. But it's a starting point, and I think it facilitates a further conversation. And so this is my last slide and coming to the end of my remarks, and Rick and I and Mark will be happy to answer any questions. But as I said at the outset, in my mind, I think, the next step is, this is, as you guys know, very high level. It might be a working session with your staff to go over a little bit more detail of the condition assessment findings, so the concerns that we have, understand how they're viewing those, and then start leading into development of a capital improvement plan for the community and what we would refer to as the 3 utilities that you guys own right now. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions if this is the appropriate time.
I'm sure there's a few questions. I'm sure there's a lot of questions. I like your suggestion. And there's a lot of stuff right there. I like your suggestion of a working session that would work. Maybe you meet with staff, and I know you guys are dedicating a lot of time, but then I think that when you come together with that, then we have a working session for however long we need that day. I noticed and these are just my comments real quick, and I'm sorry. I noticed, you're kind of next step. I think there's a point in time where we need to sit down and let's discuss what the next step is about how we go about engaging you. I don't think it's fair that you dedicate all this time and all this effort and we don't have a plan to move forward. I think that plan to move forward should come sooner rather than later in this process. I know you guys are working with Texaco, but I just want to make sure we follow all the proper procedures so that neither you get ahead of yourself or we get ahead of ourselves, that we're going down the path that we're obligated to as a public entity and that sort of thing. Those are my thoughts kind of on how we might move forward with this, but
I understand. I agree. There was an effort involved in the condition assessment, and I will tell you, we're happy to do that. We try to help out whoever we can. We enjoy I guess I would say the luxury of having a lot of staff with a lot of expertise and years of knowledge. So we do this a lot in communities, but you're exactly right. If there is a way forward, it needs to follow all the rules and requirements that the city has. But most importantly, I believe it's something that the city needs to be comfortable with. If the decision was no in that regard, we would be happy to continue to sit down with you and do a working session to kind of hand off. Here's where we were with the condition assessment. It's now in your hands, and we'll step away and you can give us a call if that.
And I appreciate that, and I think we do. And I wasn't suggesting that we don't do these. I just know that you guys at this point even had dedicated a lot of man hours and efforts and things like that. I just want to make sure that that neither one of us get too far ahead of ourselves, and then there's bad feelings later on if things don't work out. And I'm not saying that's going to happen or it's not. I just think that it's a good idea. But I would like, and if the council would agree to this, I would like to have a very good working session, maybe after you meet with the staff. And then we come back and be able to, I mean, like I said, if it takes all day, and maybe we have a further opportunity to discuss that whole
Next steps,
next steps.
yes.
So,
That all is exactly the things that were going through my mind. I would very much like to go through this in greater detail with you guys. So I think a working session is the answer to that. But I like the idea of you having the chance to sit with our staff first and get feedback from them on the things you found. I think maybe that'll help present to us. And I appreciate the things you've said about our staff, because we are very proud of them. We think they work very, very hard. Our history is what it is, and we got to go from here. And so that's the approach of this council. But I also agree with Mike. We'd like to know what we need to do and how we move forward with you guys, if that's what we choose to do. So that we're clear with the community that we're not just stringing y'all along or whatever. We're working together, and there's a path forward. So that's my.
and I would just say that to you in the audience, that when we schedule this working session, it will be open to the public. So all the information that would be discussed in that work session would be, it will be a public meeting, just in case there was any question. Eldon?
I just want to make sure that we keep moving forward on this. I know that a lot of things have been discovered and brought out during that time that you spent here going over our system, and I feel like the others that we need to kind of have a clear path of what's our next steps. And then get started in that and get it in action. The more we delay, the more water we're wasting, the more things that need to be improved are set to the side, and had already a long period of that going on. And I'm ready to move forward and try to get us going in the right direction. So if we could set up a meeting and get all this put together, I do have a lot of questions. I do have a lot of things to go over, so but we'd like to see that happen.
Anyone else?
I'm kind of like Eldon. I think I need to save a bunch of my questions. You answered the majority of them. But I first want to start by saying thank you guys for coming. Thank you for working with us. We greatly appreciate your expertise. We've got a very young staff. I know we have a very eager staff that wants to be up to the task, but I think we need guidance. And so I am so thankful that you're here. My one request is, if you had several safety concerns at our utility that I'm at, we have a commitment to safety. That is number one priority. So if there are issues that you have, please get those to them quickly. Even if we're taking weeks to schedule meetings, I don't want those guys going weeks without having your knowledge and expertise on the safety side of it. So please feel free to share with them, because to me, you kind of mentioned the Wilson report. That report's almost the sky is falling as far as our water infrastructure. And so this isn't something that we can just say, well, let's wait for the next meeting to deal with this. We need to keep moving on this. This isn't something that we can just sit by and wait and sit our hands and see what happens. We need to be very proactive in finding solutions. And I think that you guys are going to be a great part in that. So I do thank you and commend you for everything you've done.
Happy to do it, and I would say, in terms of the safety concerns, we're more than happy to really start those conversations as early as possible. And I would tell you, we value safety to the same degree. It sounds like you do. But there are different ways you can achieve safety, and we've had instances where we've had utilities with a whole host of electrical panels that had jumpers in them and all sorts of crazy stuff. going on and we could have gone out and built new panels right away and it would have made customers' rates go through the roof. And so we took a non-traditional approach and we clearly labeled and secured those and said nobody is allowed to go in that unless they're a licensed electrician. So kind of put what I would refer to as a non-traditional control, and I think there are a host of those that are available that we can talk about.
Anyone else? Can we get in contact within the next day or so and start trying to get some dates that we can schedule this? And I think you heard, we don't want to, say, well, we got a meeting in December 1st, we'll do that. I think we need to move sooner than later. And we can discuss some of at the same time, some of the logistics about, the procedure for moving forward and making decisions and doing all. And I agree. I think the sooner the better.
Yes, sir.
So
The good news is that they've gone through it with the city of Texaco, so you've kind of laid the groundwork as far as logistics and getting this done. So we do have somewhat of a roadmap, hopefully.
I think the drawback to this whole situation is the fact that, Jeff came here from Arizona.
right.
It's not like he can just show up tomorrow at the drop of a hat.
And that's why I said, let's get in contact.
He's got schedules too.
Sure.
I can assure you, I probably do a better job speaking than actually having all the knowledge that I have. It's Rick, it's Mark. These guys are the secret sauce. They have all the knowledge, and so I certainly would not need to be an impediment to any of these discussions taking place. I'm happy to join when I can, but
yeah,
my absence will not slow down any efforts on your part.
Good. Okay.
That's good to know.
All right.
We do have the luxury of Zoom meetings if you guys get.
The luxury or curse you want to do. I don't know.
The
Sometimes.
last one for me, but
Yeah,
yes.
I get you. All right.
Thank you. very
Thank
much.
you so much for your time and being here this evening and let's be in touch soon.
Sounds great.
All right. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Pohl. I was looking at an agenda for something later in the week, that you're presenting it.
I've got my fingerprints on everything.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. I really appreciate you inviting me, Alvin especially. You find the best of friends on social media. So anyway, I was called into a meeting. I was called first of all by John D'Antonio about Portales perhaps injecting wastewater, and he was asking about the statute 72-5A NMSA, which is aquifer storage and recovery, or groundwater storage and recovery, underground storage and recovery, whatever you want to call it. So that is the tool that the state engineer's office has in order to allow municipalities or water suppliers to take what would be considered excess water, put it in the ground for drought relief, for these kind of things. Unfortunately, Portales doesn't have that luxury. So I asked if I could speak off camera with John D'Antonio about the process, about it's pretty lengthy process, it's pretty expensive process. That's why only Albuquerque and Rio Rancho have taken advantage of the statute, is because they're really the only municipalities that can afford the high standards that statute 72-5A requires. So I'm very much an outside of the box thinker. I just like solving problems, finding the best solution to things without the extra bureaucracy. So what I proposed to Mr. D'Antonio was that they approach this as an aquifer recharge project and not aquifer storage and recovery. Aquifer recharge would then cut the office of the state engineer necessarily out of the loop. I had to talk to my directors and the district offices, because they're like, what? Why would you not want to permit this? And my point is that Portales is not able to divert their entire permitted amount. They are now migrated down to the southwest corner of the well field. And so the aquifer storage and recovery tool is not the tool for your needs. What I proposed is that the that Portales focuses on getting that wastewater treatment, to like Class A. You know, Jeff spoke to, the problems and he kind of took away a lot of my thunder. But, that's really, what it boils down to is I was on the meeting with like 10 people from the environment department, from the directors all the way down through all the bureau chiefs, through the pollution control, through the UIC permitting agents, and they were all on the call. And so Wilson, of course, we have John and Graham on the call from Wilson. And we proposed to the environment department what my harebrained scheme is to just get the water to that class that the environment department is gonna say, you know what, yeah, that's injectable. It can be done. You know, Rio Rancho does it all the time. You don't have a lot of the challenges, you know, like a huge hospital and everything that Rio Rancho does in a lot of industries. So what I found is that the dairy customers that you have is probably a lot of your problems. And so those dairies really need to be required to do pre-treatment before it comes to your wastewater treatment. You need to put that ownership on to your customers, you know, they need to get it treated to a level that it's not going to kill all your biology in your plant. And so that really is the nut of in the shell is that the wastewater treatment plant, it's pretty new, like 10 years old, maybe something like that. And rumor has it that there was some electrical issues and that the cost of electricity was really soaring in the plant when it first was put online. And so there may be some issues with, how it's wired that may be the problem, but I'm certainly not the electrical engineer to figure that out. But you do have a lot of effluent along with the Southwest cheese. I keep looking at that plant because, they put out a lot of water, you take a lot of water out of milk to make cheese. And I know that the treatment of that whey water is a little difficult, but it's a worldwide problem, not a Portales problem. And so I think that there's, perhaps some new treatment systems that maybe they can, it's going to be spendy, but if you can get that treatment down, that's a lot of extra water that is actually imported into your region. So, don't ever discount that. They did come to us in 2017 about an aquifer storage and recovery project, but at the time they hadn't conducted PFAS studies that they now have completed. But, really the problem with the PFAS is mostly in the domestic wells and the dairy wells and irrigation well seems to really have been hit hard, but it doesn't seem like the municipal wells have been put into jeopardy from that mess up there. So anyway, I thank you for inviting me, and I just wanted to say that I probably saved you $250,000 just by cutting the office of the state engineer out of the project. But when it comes to your lake water, then come and see us, because that would be water that you could have above and beyond, and perhaps maybe rebuild some of that well field with some of your surface water. So anyway, that's my my little harebrained scheme there, and thank you for letting me come and take your time.
Stay there.
Okay.
You don't mind, I want a little help here, okay?
Sure.
Water is not my field. I've learned more about water in the last year than I ever probably wanted to know. But I still don't know about that much. But explain in terms for me that knows very little, what you're talking about to take water out of the treatment plant and put it back into a well. Are we pumping it down a pipeline to a well and putting it back in the ground into
Yes.
the aquifer?
Correct.
And then bringing it back out in our wells out in the well.
Yes, and there has to be resident time, the water. I brought these are the conditions of approval for Rio Rancho's project. Because I wanted you to see how they changed through time. I was gonna drop these off on my way out the door and run. No, but the first permit was issued in 2014. It was really strenuous. But as they proved themselves, then in 2020, they lightened the load in the conditions. and then in 2022 lightened it a bit more. That's just to show you that, you know, these are kind of malleable projects, and the environment department, you know, they want to see that the water's staying in the aquifer from the time you inject it to the time you pull it out, 9 months at the minimum. Any residual pathogens would then be treated by the microbial actions in the soil. And so, that's really what it does, is it cuts out the office of the state engineer said, what, we're gonna take away that for wetting your Bale zone. And we're gonna take away another amount for meter inaccuracy, and we're gonna take away, you don't need anything taken away. What you're trying to do is just recover your permitted water. Whatever you pull out of the ground, you have the right to deplete it 100%. Right now, you're evaporating it. So the best way to get more wet water into your system is to get that wastewater treatment plant up to snuff, so that we can then inject it back into the ground. And we're down here in the southwest corner of the well field pump, and now we put it up into the northeast corner of the well field. And then it has that travel time, that residual resident time in the aquifer, to allow for the NMED to feel comfortable with you recovering at that point. But it's just gonna be recovery like you're pulling out your permitted water. It's just the meter reading to the office of the state engineer, what your production was pumped for the month. We're not gonna be concerned about what did you clean, what did you put back in the ground, that part of it, we're not gonna be concerned with. Okay, we would only be concerned if that was you've laid water and you're trying to build up a bank account, a storage account. That's when the state engineer gets involved, and we need annual meetings, capability reports, you know, it's a process to do aquifer storage and recovery. But what I see you need is wet water in your wells. So that's what I'm proposing, is that you clean up the water, you clean it good, you clean it real good, and then you put it in the aquifer, and then you start recharging your aquifer and quit evaporating.
Thank you.
And I'd like to know how much water is being lost in the leak lines. I saw water loss on epcor's slide. Was it through an AWWA audit, or is this just perceived losses to the system just because there's lack of metering?
It's the latter.
Okay, so anyway, and without meters, you won't know if you have system losses anyway, so. So meters, here's a meter.
So Jerry, basically, after listening to what you were saying, EPA is getting less stringent on the recharge wells than they were. Is that what I gathered?
No. They're not lessening their stringency at all. They are doing the same thing they would do if you added on the additional application with the office of the state engineer to do aquifer storage and recovery. They're not lessening their requirements at all. What they're doing is cutting the office of the state engineer out of the mix. So you don't have to come up with a capability report. You don't have to file application, advertise it in the newspaper, yada, yada, yada. So the aquifer injection is covered under UIC rules, underground injection control rules. So it's going to be 100% in the wheelhouse of the environment. Yep. And there's also some grant money available. I sent it to Wilson. That's for small scale storage. So it really fit your bill. I mean, like to the T. There's very short term grant opportunity. So I shared that with Wilson as well. It just came to us. And I've got other grant opportunities. I just finished doing a presentation on funding opportunities, and there's probably 10 different pots you can be dipping your little honey pots, like that, little honey pots you can move into. So there's a lot of opportunity, unprecedented amount of money available for small water systems right now. And if you regionalize, there's even more. If you were to regionalize with Texaco, a great, whatever, it only takes 2 to regionalize. You don't have to connect pipes, but you just regionalize through in articles of incorporation and create a regional system, and the state will just come and throw money at you. Just throw money at you. So let me leave these with you.
Okay, would you mind leaving them with our city manager here? It's probably more responsible to. If you saw the paper I got right here, right now, it's. So,
Very nice.
thank you, Jerry. Appreciate it.
So thank you, and please feel free to reach out. I will send more information about funding.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you for your time this evening, Jerry.
I'll be concerned.
Okay, we're now going to move on to our action items. The first item tonight is the approval of my appointment for the Planning and Zoning Commission. If there's no objection, I would like to appoint Corey Cole. Corey is a PhD, works in College of Business, he does finance, and he is very interested in being involved with the city in any capacity. And I've spoken with him, and he is excited to serve in this capacity. So if there's no objection to that, I would like to appoint Corey Cole. And I will, if that's, is there any objection to that?
No, sir.
Okay. Thank you. I will get you the information for Corey because I know you have a planning and zoning coming up soon. Thank you. Next is community services. Approval of easement application for 225 Floyd Glidden Circle, encroachment of 14 feet of a chain link fence into the alley at the northeastern corner of Lot 6. Application submitted by owner Valentino Rodriguez. And you look more like Laura than Kelly. Okay.
Thank you, Miller and Council. So we have an application for an easement at 225 Floyd Golden Circle. This is the neighboring property to the easement that was heard back in April that was denied. So we did approach the homeowner about getting an easement since his fence was also encroaching and we were aware of it because of the other application. At this time, he would like to keep the fence in place due to not being able to afford to move the fence at this time. And it's not granted, he's asking for more time to move the fence. We did speak to solid waste about the fence. They said there hasn't been an issue with their trash cups. We get that, please. And then this is just a picture of the alleyway. He's on this left-hand side, and that is where the alleyway is looking at this time. And Mr. Rodriguez is here to speak tonight. Also, if you have any questions.
Okay. Thank you. Questions?
Well, I yeah, I got a little bit on this one. I was on planning and zoning when we addressed the one next door. And we did require them to remove that fence to make that sale. And I just don't think it'd be appropriate for us to give an exception here right next to it, exactly the same size. And I did visit with Livonia, and it did not go before planning and zoning, so my recommendation from the council would be that needs to go to planning and zoning first. And see why it didn't get through the same process as first one.
So easements do not go to planning and zoning. They go directly, if it's under 5 feet, it's up to the city manager to decide for approval or not. And if it's over 5 feet, it goes directly to city council. So it's actually not something that's heard because it's not required to have a public hearing.
Well, in that case, I'm fine with giving the gentleman more time to move it, but I just don't see us making a different exception for the property right next door to when it was told that they need to move their fence.
Why did the last one go to planning and zoning?
It didn't.
Because it was a sale.
Oh, because it was a sale.
It didn't go to planning and zoning.
Well, he just said he was set there through it.
No, it never went to planning and zoning.
Oh, it was here?
Not this.
I believe it was in April that it went to city council, but it never went to planning and zoning.
Man, I've slept a couple of times, but that's not the way I remember it.
Yeah, part of it was getting your knee replaced, so,
Exactly.
okay. So what's the pleasure of the council here? Are there more questions before we let Laura go?
How much more time is being requested?
I'm not sure. I think he was hoping until tax season comes and he gets that return. But
So another 6 months?
3 months? Yeah, 3 to 6 months.
Since it's not impeding at this time, I'll be okay with 6.
Would you like to make a motion?
Yes, sir. I make a motion that we allow the owner of the property 6 more months to move the fence, but that we deny the request.
Second that.
Did you get the motion?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Have a motion by Mr. Rappler, a second by Mr. Selk. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none. Diane, how do you vote?
Yes,
Okay,
good.
all those in favor that are present, how do you? If you're in favor of the motion, speak by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Next is the fire department approve and accept donation of one Seek Fire Pro 300 thermal imaging camera and gear keeper from Legacy Church. Chief Kathy, are you still there?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor and Council. We just want to thank Legacy Church for their continued support and ask council to approve the donation of the thermal imager as well as the gear keeper with an online quote total of $1,258. And I'll stand for any questions.
Questions for the chief on this? Those are pretty cool. Yeah, yeah, just another one.
And they've already given us 3 of them, is that right? They've already done that, haven't they?
This is the 4th year that they've given us cameras, and I forget the total, but it's quite a few. So
Okay.
we appreciate all that they've done.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Self, second by Mr. Lopez. I'm gonna do this a little different. All those present in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Diane, how do you vote?
Aye,
Thank you, ma'am.
thank you.
Thank you. Now we're going to move to street infrastructure. Ms. McVeigh, the first item is approved transportation project fund, EPF award with resolution 2024-29 for $1,567,500, state share of 95% and $82,500 city share of 5% administered by the New Mexico Department of Transportation.
Council Mayor, we are asking if you all would like to accept this grant that we did receive. And this is for maintenance. So we would go and we would maintenance the road instead of, I guess, rebuilding or doing major construction.
Is there particular roads that are targeted in this application?
Yeah.
Okay,
So we're looking at University, Cherry, and O, and North K.
These are the same roads that we went over about 4 or 5 months ago.
Yes, whenever we submitted the
the
application.
applications. Yeah, we got
This is just basically a resurfacing that's not tearing up and redoing. It's,
Correct.
so is it just gonna be a chip seal or?
So that, I believe, depends on the weather as well, Stephen, am I right on that one?
Will it be chip seal or will it be that overlay, that micro, whatever they call it?
It could be either one.
Okay. But we're not just gonna go throw something over it.
No,
We're gonna make sure that it's ready and can be.
yeah, we'll make sure. It's
And will it be that part of North Avenue K, north of Highway 70 on towards Cherry? Right, okay.
And this will be, we'll put this out for bids. This is not the city doing this.
Yes, it's in golf pits.
Okay.
Unless we can get someone at CBS to take.
Correct. So if we can get a cooperative, then we don't have to do this.
Any other questions? What is the pleasure of the council on resolution 24-29?
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Elkins, a second by Mr. Lopez. I do need a roll call on this one, Ms. Swopes.
Yes. Mr. Self,
Yes.
Mr. Rackler,
Yes.
Mr. Elkins,
Yes.
Ms. Parker,
Yes.
Mr. Merrick,
Yes.
Mr. Lopez.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Yes.
Our next item here is a approved resolution 2024-30, Transportation Project Fund Match Waiver administered by New Mexico Department of Transportation and First Amendment of LP 20056.
So this one, whenever we did apply for our TPS grant, we did put in that we were going to go ahead and apply for the match waiver as well. So this is just a follow-up with that, and so we are asking for our 5% to be covered by NMDOT. And that would give us $1,650,000 without the 5% coming from the city share.
So this is asking for the waiver of the 82,000. Okay. Questions?
Have we already asked for this, or is this approving that they've accepted this, or?
This is your permission for me to ask them.
Okay.
It goes with the resolution whenever I submit it.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Merrick, second by Mr. Self. Once again, Ms. Swopes, will you call the roll, please?
Yes. Mr. Self,
Yes.
Mr. Rackler,
Yes.
Mr. Elkins,
Yes.
Ms. Parker,
Yes.
Mr. Merrick,
Yes.
Mr. Lopez.
Yes.
Passes.
Thank you, ma'am. Next is approved resolution 2024-31 for submission for the state for the capital outlay streets improvements and for capital outlay street improvements administered by the New Mexico Department of Transportation.
Yes, okay, so with this one, the council has actually already said yes to accepting. And that the award was already signed. However, this is mostly for the resolution so that we can sign the resolution, and whenever we turn in the grant agreement, we turn in the resolution with it. So this one is asking if the council will sign the resolution.
So technically, I mean, basically, we were approved by the legislature for $400,000 in capital outlay. And this is just part of the paperwork to get that.
And there's no match.
No match. Any questions? Once again, I need a roll call. First, I'd like a motion, I guess.
Motion to approve.
All right, thank you, Mr. Rackler. Thank you, Mr. Self. Now, Ms. Swopes.
Okay. Mr. Self
Yes.
and Mr. Rackler,
Yes.
Mr. Elkins,
Yes.
Ms. Parker,
Yes.
Mr. Merrick,
Yes.
Mr. Lopez.
Yes.
It carries.
Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it. Next is finance. The first item
Number 2.
is ratification of Finance Department's
Yeah.
action on bills, expenses for the month of July and August. Ms. Rivera. Were you able to get on that fidelity deal today?
Good evening, council. You have before you in your packet also, the accounts payable expense report for both the month of July and August. Each report contains a summary and then a detail for your review. I will stand for any questions and ask for a motion to ratify the expenses for July and
I would just like to say this was much more readable than what we had in the past. It was very easy to go through and kind of tell where the money was going. So I thank you for, I know you put a lot of work and a lot of time into getting this sorted out. And this was much easier for me to understand than what we had in the past. So thank you very much.
with that, I appreciate your patience as we take on a big workload and a lot ahead of us and working with our department heads. It's been great. So thank you. And of course, I welcome the feedback on the information as well as any reports that would make it easier to understand.
I'd like to say, I second that I appreciate the efforts that you put in there. And you're probably gonna get a lot of questions from me because since we're new council members, this is actually the first time that we've got to go over some of these finances and see some things firsthand. And so it did bring up a lot of questions on. And I spoke with you today about maybe another page that you could add in there on the inbound monies along with our expenditures that are categorized. So just kind of help me decipher it. But I do appreciate the efforts and the ability that we have now to be able to look at our finances and go over some of these things. Gives me a lot of assurance now that I didn't have before.
Any other questions, comments?
Just that the finance committee, we met the other day and we unanimously approved. Recommend for city council approval.
Is there a
motion? I'll make a motion that the city council approve this.
Did you second it, Mr. Lopez? Okay. This takes a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Ms. Parker,
Aye.
no one's opposed. That motion passes. Now then comes the fun one. Ms. Rivera, approve resolution 2024-32 budget adjustments for FY 24-25 first quarter.
Definitely fun and lengthy, but I will not go over each one as there are 4 pages of budget adjustments in this first quarter. So in your packet, you will find the budget adjustments along with that budget recap report. So, these budget adjustments are of course necessary in this first quarter to budget accordingly for the grants and some revenues and or estimated expenditures that we will have in this fiscal year. So of course, for time consideration purposes, I won't go over each one, but I will inform you that in the budget adjustment details, you will see the fund, the department, and the adjusted amount for your reference. You'll see the initial budget amount and then with the adjustment, and then you'll see the ending budget amount. Then of course, the recap page will present where our budget stands with these pending adjustments, so you can see the impact of it. I will stand for any questions regarding the budget adjustment.
Mr. Silk, you got any questions or comments? I know Ms. Cordova called me and wasn't able to attend tonight, so.
Yeah, once again, everything looked good. We, as a finance committee, approved it and bring before council the recommendation for approval as well.
This is, I'm guessing getting I don't know how to say this politically correct. I'm gonna try. Getting this aligned better with the way you want to run the show. Is that a fair statement?
We did submit our preliminary budget and final budget was very similar to the prior year, just not having someone in that role to complete a budget and get with all the department heads. So this is to, in a sense, clean up some of that.
Okay, so we'll see less of this in the future. We hope.
So we will still continue working off some budget adjustments, but this
probably the most of the budget adjustments you'll see.
We'll probably see budget adjustments, Mr.
Right.
Reckler, about every quarter.
Right. Well,
Just
we saw
because
it in
of
schools
maybe
all
some
the time, but
grants.
it wasn't to this extent though.
Yeah, for example,
Yes.
she'll have to go in and put that 1.5 million on the streets
Right.
because that wasn't approved here, in little things like
Right.
that. So,
I'm
Any-
not second.
any other questions right now?
Second it.
Did you make a motion yet?
Yeah, already did. Make a motion that we approve.
Okay, and Mr. Lopez seconded that motion. Now, are there any other questions?
No, sir.
Okay,
And
all right. If there's no further questions, Ms. Wolf, will you call the roll on this, please?
Yes. Mr. Self,
Yes.
Mr. Rackler,
Yes.
Mr. Elkins,
Yes.
Ms. Parker,
Yes.
Mr. Merrick,
Yes.
Mr. Lopez.
Yes.
Thank you.
Carried.
Ms. Rivera, before you leave, I want to thank you so much for all the time and effort you put into doing this, because I know you stepped into a mess. That's the best way to put it. So, thank you, and we certainly appreciate all your efforts. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to projects. Ms. McVeigh is coming back to, we're going to be asked to approve resolution 2024-33, Clean and Beautiful Grant Award for $15,933. This grant requires an in-kind share from the city, administered by the State of New Mexico Tourism Department.
Okay, so the Clean and Beautiful grant, if you look at your. If you look at your grants agreement. I don't remember what page it is on, I'm so sorry, I'm working. There is a very colorful spreadsheet that we can see.
Right here.
Okay, so on this line, it will tell you, our goals that we have set for what to do with the community. And that kind of helps to explain a little bit about the Clean and Beautiful. We like to use this to clean up the town, to involve our citizens, to involve our youth.
Do we not have that we can put up here for the people in the public? I'm sorry, I interrupted.
It's okay. But yes, so we have things that we're wanting to do with this, like, our convenience center, to put some signage up instead of, just to replace what we have right now. We're looking at putting some more benches and picnic tables in some areas. And with Clean and Beautiful, I like to use the recycled ones. We are looking at planting some drought resistant plants in Rotary and to planting some trees. And to again contribute towards the community garden, I'm so sorry, over at James Elementary, which we try to help out with every year through the Clean and Beautiful grant. So we are asking if you would like to accept this.
We've been awarded the grant. We just have to accept it. Is that correct? Further questions? Did everybody find this in the packet?
We have money set aside to match this amount.
So it's an in-kind, which means that we do work that would be equivalent to financial.
Further questions? Do I have a motion to approve resolution 2024-33?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Elkins, second by Mr. Lopez. Ms. Swopes, will you please call the roll?
Yes. Mr. Self,
Yes.
Mr. Rackler,
Yes.
Mr. Elkins,
Yes.
Ms. Parker,
Yes.
Mr. Merrick, Mr. Merrick,
Yes.
Mr. Lopez.
Yes.
Carries.
Thank you. Next item, Ms. McVeigh, is the approved resolution 2024-34, adopting the FY 2026 through 2030 infrastructure capital improvement plan as approved by the council committee.
So this is similar to the one that was presented at the last meeting. However, we did meet with 4 of the council members and we did go over our top 10. And the list that everyone can see is what we all decided were more prevalent for the community.
And it's my understanding that if we were any of these items, even though they're not, let's just say that one of our legislators wanted to give us $265,000 for the boom truck that's on there. You know, we don't have to go by, I mean, because some of that money, we're not gonna get 44 million. That's on our top priority, but as long as it's on our infrastructure plan, then the chance of it being funded is more likely.
And it's closer to the top of that. That's
And
why-
even if
why we
number
start.
one is funded partially, because it's on there. Any questions for Ms. McVeigh?
I just want to thank you for the time you put in on that. The meeting we had was very productive, I felt, and I feel this list is much more aligned with what we need to be concentrating on than what we saw before. And I appreciate everybody's time that was there that day. Even Eldon, who was there, COVID.
Yeah. I just kind of wanted to clarify also for those that weren't on there, this already has had to be submitted.
Right.
Because we had a deadline. There can be amendments made to it if anybody sees something that they would rather change around in the order or bring something up from our ICIP list below that 10. So, but this has been already submitted. It just needs approval from the council because of a deadline that she was facing. So.
Hey.
Can I ask one question? Just because I don't understand what this even is. What is a City of Portales downtown pedestrian facility? What is that?
So that is making downtown more accessible for pedestrians to be able to get around and to be able to access, and more ADA compatible, multimodal, sorry, that type of thing.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you guys that put in your time on this. I appreciate that. What's the pleasure of the council?
Make a motion, we approve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Rackler, a second by Mr. Self. Ms. Swopes, will you please call the roll?
Yes. Mr. Self,
Yes.
Mr. Rackler,
Yes.
Mr. Elkins,
Yes.
Ms. Parker,
Yes.
Mr. Merrick, Mr. Lopez,
Yes.
and it carries.
Thank you, Jay. Appreciate it. Next is Mr. Moyer, and his first item is approve resolution 2024-35, supporting the funding of the New Mexico Military Base Planning Commission.
So, as I have not been to an armed forces support committee meeting yet, but you have one tomorrow. I was given a task by senior managers up in Clovis that the committee had. All the towns have agreed to do a resolution funding the New Mexico Base Planning Commission. So this, if anybody didn't know, they provide support services to all bases in New Mexico, including the one here at Canada. It's not going to be funded after 2028. And what this resolution does is show our support to try to keep the funding.
There's no fiscal commitment. here.
Right,
We're
just-
just-
No, yeah, this is just a resolution.
Just wanted to
showing
support.
Support from the city, for our military.
Question?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Merrick, a second by Mr. Elkins. Once again, Ms. Swopes, will you please call the roll?
Yes. Mr. Self,
Yes.
Mr. Rackler,
Yes.
Mr. Elkins,
Yes.
Ms. Parker,
yes,
Mr. Merrick,
Yes.
Mr. Lopez,
Yes.
and it carries.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Moyer is approve resolution 2024-36, supporting the acceptance of the state road fund agreement for the $599,758, allowing the city of Portales to purchase the new dumpsters as promised by Governor Grisham in July of 2024.
So what you are looking at is the waterway paperwork to receive funds so that we can order our detectors. Once we sign this, we return it, we should have the funds hopefully in 5 to 10 days, and then we will order all the dumpsters. We already have all the paperwork ready to go, and it's probably an 8 to 12 week turnaround.
Can I ask, it looks like in here that we will purchase 753 yards and 159 4-yard dumpsters. That's 909. How many does that get? And how many do we have total? Do we know?
We got about 1,200 on. But this is all they were getting at the last.
That's a good majority. We'll take it. Cool, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? What's the pleasure of the council?
Move for approval.
Motion by Mr. Elkins, second by Mr. Rackler. Ms. Swopes, call the roll, please.
Yes. Mr. Self,
Yes.
Mr. Rackler,
Yes.
Mr. Elkins,
Yes.
Ms. Parker,
yes,
Mr. Merrick,
Yes.
Mr. Lopez,
Yes.
it passes.
Thank you, ma'am. Our final item of action is a request permission to hire a city staff attorney, Mr. Moyer.
Yes, so we, right now, the city structure does not have an attorney underneath city manager. So it's a separate line item, it's a contract. So I am requesting to have an attorney put under the supervision of the city manager and to be able to hire a city staff.
Question. if you would.
Go ahead.
Can you bring us any data on how much, I mean, those of us that are new, we don't know how much that's costing year to year on a contract, how much you think it's gonna cost to hire one?
I can get you that.
That would be what I would like to know. Is this gonna save us money, cost us more money? Is it gonna?
It's a fixed cost.
Well, I understand it'd be fixed cost if it's a hiree as opposed to contract, but we should have some data on how much we spent year over year on
I
contract.
do, and well, that's Steve, because he's good, but we will save money.
I think, and I think you can get that information. I know the discussions we've had, I think this is, if we can find the right attorney, the right person, I think it will save money. I think it'll give better access to staff. and
Yeah, I'm
everybody
all
else.
for having one. I just wanna
Yeah,
make sure it's not,
and
that's the
I-
best.
you know, I
thing.
think he'll bring to a, right now he doesn't have anything. He just wants to be able to go out and.
We have a
look.
couple of numbers in mind.
Okay.
And it will save us the money. I think that, year over year, depending on how many things we have, and the more things that we do, the greater our cost for a contract attorney is. If we have a fixed cost, we don't have to worry about that.
Right. Thank you.
So this position would be for city use only, they would not be able to do other jobs other than work for the city.
Correct.
Are we gonna be able to find somebody to do that?
I have faith that we will. If you want it, I'm targeting. My target audience for city attorney would be somebody 2 to 3 years out of law school that maybe works defender's office. That's kind of where I'm going. There's a lot of benefits to city employment, retirement, things like that. A set kind of work schedule that we would have. But I think we can make it. I think we can incentivize it and make it attractive enough.
The other incentive that somebody would have is if they have student debt, they work so long in a governmental capacity that gets some forgiveness on student debt too. So that's also something that's attractive to someone to look at this.
But we do have the avenue of the municipal league for help in that situation also, so.
And the municipal league now has a program, they could actually provide us with a city attorney. But in the event that this does, as Steve's contracts has expired and we haven't found somebody, we still have that as an option to use until.
And we will still reach out to the municipal league for things that are outside of their scope that they have more knowledge of.
Any other questions? It's a pleasure of the council not allowing him to proceed with finding a staff attorney.
I'm very similar with Mike. I'd like a little bit more information to know what our costs are before I would be good with it, but.
This isn't necessarily committing to
No.
anything. This is just
Allowing him to move forward and seeing whether or not it's truly feasible.
Well, but I think if we approve it, we just give him, we're giving him the permission without us discussing it again.
Well, he'd have to bring it back to us when he finds somebody under the terms that he had.
And when you do, we'd like to see those comparisons.
That being said,
Is it a motion type thing? It's just a request. So how do we deal with this, Mike?
Well, I think you just make a motion to allow him to proceed trying to hire a city attorney.
So move.
second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Diane, how do you vote?
Aye.
Is there any opposition?
Yes.
Okay, so Mr. Elkins opposed to that. All right, that concludes the action items on our agenda. It's now time for city council and staff comment. So I will go first to staff. Is there anyone on the staff that has any comments at this time, or Chief Williams?
Just real briefly, attended an interview football game, you should have seen the water.
Okay. Anyone else back there? Okay, Mr. Dorr. Clerks, librarian, no one? All right.
Start with Diane.
I'm gonna start with Diane. Thank you, Mr. Rackler. Ms. Parker, comments?
No comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Rackler.
I do actually have a few things today. I didn't last time, so welcome. One thing, and I meant to mention it, Mr. Rivera, while you were up there, some of the things on our bills and accounts don't reflect what the business's names are correctly. One specifically is Trader Horn. That's not really Trader Horn anymore. It's Ace True Value. I wonder if we should be adjusting those to reflect correctly. Justin Davis has mentioned a bunch. I think that's probably D&D Plumbing. Justin Davis. So I'd like to see it reflect the business names. I think that might be better down the road. We mentioned two meetings ago about getting something underway on a water rate study. I'd like to know where we're at with that. Are we?
Waterworth was already doing something for us, so we're actually contacting them this week. They have a presentation for it.
At our next meeting.
For us, and then it should go to Public Works next.
Okay. And then the last thing I kind of have is some, the weeds are becoming just insane. I mean, some properties have them 6, 8 feet tall. You can see them over 6-foot fences. But the one thing I'm really concerned about right now, and I know it kind of goes back to our street sweeper discussion a million times, but we're getting now tons of weeds growing in the gutter line because that's not being swept away. So dirt builds up in those gutter lines and now we have weeds. And I know it's property owner to the middle of the street, but you're not gonna see a lot of citizens getting out in the street cleaning weeds out of the gutter. So I'm just wondering if there's anything or something we could do to try to improve our looks. I mean, it's just, the weeds are atrocious. I mean, that. Oh, that's just.
For code enforcement, we're trying to work on that for the tall weeds. I have seen some that have been trimmed back and taken care of. We're working diligently, but our code enforcement person is out with surgery, so, and then animal control, they're all trying to pick up the slack and do that work. As far as the street sweeper, we did run it on Friday, but there's still something wrong with the water system. If you don't have the water to keep the dirt down, obviously it's not really that much right effect on it. So we're working on it. That's all. Good. Mr. Mayor.
I've been approached by a few citizens that live south of 18th Street on South Globe, alongside of our drainage ditch. They made me aware that there's issues with being able to see traffic coming when they try to pull out onto 18th Street. And I'd like to see us get in there and trim some trees back where that we don't end up with an accident at that intersection. We've got some that are overhanging from one of the property owners to the west of South Globe and then along our drainage ditch. I don't know what we can do to alleviate those elm trees that have come up through there. I know spraying is kind of out of the question because there's residences around there. But maybe we can get a crew in there and start cutting some down and chopping them up and spraying stumps or something.
We could trim the east side, but that tree, that garbage piece is good.
We not, since it's impeding traffic or a hazard to traffic, can we not go in there and?
We can, I'll have them and I'll look at it, and I'm not sure if we've already given them a notice or anything like that, so.
He lives in the county.
Oh,
What?
He lives in the county, he's not city.
Okay.
Well, then we need to go talk to the county about doing that because I know there could be some liability to the county and to us for those obstructions.
I'll talk to the county manager. Okay.
And there's some other places around town that are the same situation. We've got trees hanging out in the intersections and. Yeah.
Well, Steve, do we not have, if we have easement there, would we not have the ability to go clear our easement to make sure that that's cleared? I would think we have full right to do that. So even if he says no, I think you can go trim it up to our line. It may not look pretty, but it'd clear it.
Well, the power companies can have that same right.
Right.
Because of power lines. So
Right.
I would think.
Yeah, we can't get on his property, but we can trim up to his property.
Right.
I would think. Yeah.
Well, if you're gonna trim the trees, you better trim the weeds too, because them
We've
weeds,
got some weeds at
they're
all.
higher than the houses.
Anything else, Mr. Mayor?
No, I think I've already talked with them about most of my concerns. So.
Appreciate that. Appreciate you do that. Mr. Elkins.
Yeah, I've got just a couple. Jeff, Mark, Rick, I thank you guys for coming this evening. It was greatly appreciated. Really enjoyed your presentation. We look forward to working with you and seeing what we can do to further this relationship. On Mr. Rackler's comments for the rate consultant, I know that we had talked in the past about reaching out to a true consultant for the building of rates. In my opinion, the Waterworth it's a neat Excel spreadsheet that we get to just play with the numbers and make them what we want. I don't think we're getting real consulting fees or consulting services out of that. It's just hey, here's a really neat software, but then we build it how we want. So I would still highly recommend looking out to a true rate consultant to help us with those rates instead of us just picking a number and seeing if it sticks. And then Steve, for the 18th and Kilgore, what have we found? I know we had discussed this possibly at a public works meeting, but the drainage ditch, once you go south of 18th there's gas lines and water lines. Do we have any remediation on that? How are we going to fix that going forward?
So we met with constructors and Mr. Leiter the other day and Jason Burns. And we all agreed, Mr. Leidig is back out resurveying. They have what we need. So once we get that survey done for Mr. Leidig, we can get all that over to constructors and then we can get that done. And we will have to get with the gas company and the county to get that, the water line and the gas line moved more than likely.
Okay. Cool. That's all I had.
Mr. Lopez.
I was wondering if you could tell me, any other councilman. I think I know how much right of way we have in the streets. But I was wondering, is it about 5 foot or 6 foot? Or we can cut the trees if we want to. What's the how much right of way do we have from the curb and gutter to the property?
5 feet. It's 5 feet.
5 feet. Did you hear that?
I thought it was 5 feet.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
Just want to say thanks to Legacy Church. I know Queen Lee's here and Abder's was here last time to hand or accept the award, but shout out to them. Thanks for your continued support. Thanks to the epcor guys. Look forward to working with you guys. Appreciate you. Steve, on the as far as the traffic lights for the school zone, are those one timer in conjunction for both of them, or is there two?
Each one has their own time.
Okay, there's one in front of the junior high. It's not set on the same time, so.
Which one do you know?
It's the one closer to the east side. It wasn't working, and then there'll be.
They had a power outage in that area.
So it needs to be reset.
So it should be reset.
Okay. Gotcha. That's all I got.
Oh, yeah. Once again, I'd like to thank again the church for their donation, epcor for being here this evening. Let's get together and let's move forward as soon as we can get that together. I appreciate that. And other than that, we're adjourned.